Good morning, Atonement, and welcome to this, our final online Bible class in the Faith of Our Fathers course that we've been going through since, oh goodness, I believe it's been since February or March. I didn't go back and check, but it's been a while. And this is also going to be the final weekend, I guess, with summer here, with this being Memorial Day weekend. We're going to be switching to once we get back to in-person worship. It will be with the summer worship hours. So this is going to be the final hour-long Bible class, I guess you could say, that we're going to have until the fall. So we're wrapping up our study of the final patriarch of Jacob. And to do that, we're going to be in Genesis chapters 32 and 33 today. If you haven't already, please be sure to download the lesson guide that should be in the description of this video. I'm also going to have it posted on Facebook, church's Facebook page, or if you would like school's Facebook page, it'll be there as well. So why don't we begin this morning with prayer. Lord, open now my heart to hear, and through your word to me draw near. Let me your word, O pure, retain. Let me your child, and e'er remain. Amen. When we left off with Jacob last time, we spent a lot of time looking at Jacob's family dynamics. He was still living with his uncle Laban, and he is going to now, between where we left off with him last week and where we pick up with him today, a significant thing has happened, and that is the fact that Jacob has finally left Padan Aram. And if you want to hear about how all of that happened, I'd encourage you to go back and read Genesis 30 and 31. It is quite the interesting read. The circumstances under which Jacob leaves. Let's just say that it appears that tigers don't change their stripes. We have Laban trying to get Jacob to stay some more. We find out that Jacob ends up spending a total of 20 years over there with his uncle Laban. And we also see that Jacob trying to pull some deception on his own, or of his own, I should say. So anyway, what we pick up here is Genesis 32. We have Jacob on his way back to Canaan, and preparing to meet once again his brother Esau. So we're going to be going through it, like I said, Genesis 32 and 33 today. That's just over 50 verses. I forget what the exact math is, but it's again a good chunk of text, so we're just going to get right into it. Genesis 32, this is the NIV. Jacob also went on his way, and the angels of God met him. When Jacob saw them, he said, "This is the camp of God." So he named the place Mahanaim, which means two camps in Hebrew. Jacob sent messengers ahead of him to his brother Esau in the land of Seir, the country of Edom. He instructed them, "This is what you are to say to my lord Esau. Your servant Jacob says, I have been staying with Laban and have remained there till now. I have cattle and donkeys, sheep and goats, male and female servants. Now I am sending this message to my lord, that I may find favor in your eyes." When the messengers returned to Jacob, they said, "We went to your brother Esau, and now he is coming to meet you, and 400 men are coming with him." In great fear and distress, Jacob divided the people who were with him into two groups, and the flocks and herds and camels as well. He thought, if Esau comes and attacks one group, the group that is left may escape. Then Jacob prayed, "O God of my father Abraham, God of my father Isaac, Lord, you who said to me, 'Go back to your country and your relatives, and I will make you prosper,' I am unworthy of all the kindness and faithfulness you have shown your servant. I had only my staff when I crossed this Jordan, but now I have become two camps. Save me, I pray, from the hand of my brother Esau, for I am afraid he will come and attack me, and also the mothers with their children. But you have said, I will surely make you prosper, and will make your descendants like the sand of the sea, which cannot be counted." He spent the night there, and from what he had with him, he selected a gift for his brother Esau: 200 female goats and 20 male goats, 200 ewes and 20 rams, 30 female camels with their young, 40 cows and 10 bulls, and 20 female donkeys and 10 male donkeys. He put them in the care of his servants, each herd by itself, and said to his servants, "Go ahead of me and keep some space between the herds." He instructed the one in the lead, "When my brother Esau meets you and asks, 'Who do you belong to, and where are you going, and who owns all these animals in front of you?' then you are to say, 'They belong to your servant Jacob. They are a gift sent to my lord Esau, and he is coming behind us.'" He also instructed the second and third and all the others who followed the herds, "You are to say the same thing to Esau when you meet him. And be sure to say, 'Your servant Jacob is coming behind us.'" For he thought, "I will pacify him with these gifts I am sending on ahead. Later, when I see him, perhaps he will receive me." So Jacob's gifts went on ahead of him, but he himself spent the night in the camp. That night Jacob got up and took his 2 wives, his 2 female servants, and his 11 sons, and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. After he had sent them across the stream, he sent over all his possessions. So Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until daybreak. When the man saw that he could not overpower him, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip, so that his hip was wrenched as he wrestled with the man. Then the man said, "Let me go, for it is daybreak." But Jacob replied, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." The man asked him, "What is your name?" "Jacob," he answered. The man said, "Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with humans and have overcome." Jacob said, "Please tell me your name." But he replied, "Why do you ask my name?" Then he blessed him there. So Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, "It is because I saw God face to face, and yet my life was spared." The sun rose above him as he passed Peniel, and he was limping because of his hip. Therefore, to this day, the Israelites do not eat the tendon attached to the socket of the hip, because the socket of Jacob's hip was touched near the tendon. Thus, Genesis chapter 32. I would encourage you, if you have not already, again, I feel like a broken record, we've been saying this pretty much every week, questions 1 through 10, if you haven't gone through those, and answer them to the best of your ability, and maybe discuss them if you have people in your household that you're going through this with, I'd encourage you to do that, and do that now. So assuming that that is done, I just want to touch on some points here in these 10 questions. These are mostly questions aimed at just making sure that we get the flow of the story, the basics of the story, that we understand what exactly the story says. Especially in the discussion questions, we're going to get into to digging deeper and to kind of some self-application. But there's going to be a few points of application as we go through these. Anyway, number 1, try to put yourself in Jacob's shoes. What may have been going through Jacob's mind as he prepared to meet Esau? I think probably first and foremost would be the circumstances under which he had to leave this land that he was once again entering. His brother wanted to kill him. Yes, it had been 20 years now, but sometimes old grudges die hard. The last time he left, he knew that his brother wanted to kill him. So, goodness, there's got to be nervousness about that. Maybe he's still kind of wondering, okay, is Laban gonna try to pull something? Now, if you go back and you read Genesis 30 and 31, you'll see that Laban and Jacob they don't part company on the best of terms, but they do make peace, and they do make an actual covenant peace agreement between the two of them. But you just don't get the impression that there's a lot of warm feelings between the two of them. And so maybe Jacob's wondering, okay, well, is Laban going to try to pull a fast one on me again? Am I going to have to pull a fast one on him again? And it's been a journey. Jacob left with just himself, but he's coming back with flocks and herds and all these things that he has to be responsible for. They've made this long journey from Padan Aram over back to the land of Canaan. So fatigue may be part of this as well. So probably lots on Jacob's mind at this point. Number 2, what comfort did God provide? If you check out verses 1 and 2 of Genesis 32, it says that the angels of God met Jacob. God sends his angels to meet Jacob. And this is just kind of, it kind of just seems like it's passed over as if it's kind of like an aside in the biblical record. Yeah, the angels met Jacob, and that just kind of goes on. But I mean, that's significant. When God sends his angels, again, those angels, they're ministering spirits. God sends them to serve and to help his people. Number 3, why did Jacob send messengers ahead of him to Esau? What's he thinking there? Well, he's trying to feel his brother out, right? He's hoping that if he can send messengers ahead to Esau, number 1, hopefully that can start to warm Esau up. But number 2, then maybe those messengers can also report back. Okay, well, what kind of mood is Esau in here? How are we going to be greeted? And that leads right into question number 4. What news did the messengers bring? They said, yeah, Jacob, Esau is coming, and 400 men are coming with him. And without ruining it, let's just hop to 5. What was Jacob's reaction to this news? Well, I mean, goodness, you can't imagine, right? Let's again put yourself in Jacob's shoes. Your heart's got to sink. 400 men are coming with Esau to greet us. And so Jacob is starting to put 2 and 2 together here in his mind, and I don't think any of us could blame him. That he's kind of hoping for the best, preparing for the worst at this point. Why else would you need to come and meet me with 400 men, Esau? It sure seems like you have some malicious intent, some ill will here. So Jacob employs a strategy. He's assuming, okay, well, maybe Esau is coming with 400 men to put an end to me. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to split all of my people and everybody and everything with me up into 2 different camps. The thinking is, if Esau and his men come and attack the one camp, the other can kind of slip out the back door. The other has time then to escape, and that way it's not a total loss. That way Jacob can preserve some of his family and some of his things. And then one of the highlights of this section is Jacob's prayer in Genesis chapter 32, verses 9 through 12. And number 6 asks you simply to summarize Jacob's prayer to God. And I'm going to break it down into kind of conceptual parts here. First of all, in verse 9, Jacob opens his prayer with a recognition of who God is. He is the true God, and you will also notice that Jacob does address God by his proper name. Again, you see that capital L-O-R-D. He acknowledges that the capital L-O-R-D, the Lord Yahweh, he is God, God of my father Abraham, God of my father Isaac, right? And then the very next thing, again in verse 9, that Jacob does is he holds God's promise up to him and says, hey, Lord, see what you promised. Lord, it is you who said to me, go back to your country and relatives, and I will make you prosper. That's what you told me to do, God, and that's what you promised, and that's what I am doing. Okay? Then in verse 10, what does Jacob do? He confesses his own unworthiness. Jacob knows the score. He knows his standing before God. I'm unworthy of all the kindness and, yes, the faithfulness you have shown your servant. Jacob recalls his circumstances leaving Canaan as compared to his circumstances returning to Canaan. He leaves just himself. He comes back with all of this wealth, with all of these herds and flocks, with all of these people, with this tremendously large family. Jacob knows he's unworthy of all of it. Verse 11, he pleads for salvation. Save me, I pray, from the hand of my brother Esau. Here's what I'm afraid of, God. Jacob is honest and pleased with God for salvation and deliverance. And then finally, Jacob closes his prayer with a statement, once again, of trust in God's promise. But you have said, I will surely make you prosper, make your descendants like the sand of the sea, which cannot be counted. What an awesome prayer. And brothers and sisters, I would submit that that is a wonderful pattern after which we could model our own prayers. A recognition of the true God, holding up God's promises to him, saying, Lord, here is what you have promised, confessing our own unworthiness, pleading for deliverance and salvation, and closing prayer with a statement of trust, again, repeating God's promises back to him and holding God to those promises. You want an outline for an awesome prayer? We have it right here. It really is wonderful. Number 7, how else did Jacob prepare to meet Esau? And I point you at verses 13 through 20 of Genesis chapter 32. So first of all, what are Jacob's gifts? Well, here's the list of them, right? You have 200 female goats and 20 rams. 20 male goats, or 20 male goats, yes, not rams, I'm sorry. You have 200 ewes and 20 rams. You have 30 camels with their young. You have 40 cows and 10 bulls, and then you have 20 female donkeys and 10 male donkeys. Wow. Jacob is not skimping on the gifts here. He's sparing no expense. This is not a small gift to his brother. But you'll notice that Jacob also employs a particular strategy with how those gifts are going to be given to his brother Esau. He sends them ahead of him, right? And then he also splits them up according to herd or flock. So he keeps each herd or flock separate from the others, and he has one of his servants attending each herd and flock. So you have the group of goats, then you have the group of ewes and rams, then you have the group of camels, then you have the group of cows and bulls, then you have the group of donkeys. That is, by my count, and if that's how he splits up the groups, that's 5 groups total. So if one group isn't enough, Esau's going to get another, and hopefully that's enough to soften him up, and then he's going to get another, and another, and yet another. 5 groups total. Jacob's hope is that, again, all of his servants are instructed to say, these are gifts from Jacob who's coming behind us. These are gifts of Jacob who's coming behind us. Hopefully, in Jacob's mind, this kind of warms Esau up, or at least softens him a little bit. Number 8, when Jacob had sent his family and possessions to the other side of the I have a typo there. Jacob sent his family and possessions to the other side of the Jabbok River. It seems like it comes out of nowhere, but a man wrestles with Jacob. And the Hebrew puts it so matter-of-factly there. It's literally translated, and Jacob was by himself, and a man wrestled with him. Okay, what? So how long did that wrestling match last? It was all night, right? All night, until the break of dawn. And who was this man? It becomes very plain at the end of Genesis 32. This is God in human flesh. And as a matter of fact, I believe it's the prophet Hosea. In Hosea, I don't have the reference in front of me, and I should have it written down here. But I believe it's in the prophet Hosea who makes particular reference saying that this was the angel of the Lord. So this is God himself. Number 9, who was the winner? It seems that the man was, aka God, but a winner isn't outrightly declared. And as a matter of fact, God in the form of a man here actually declares Jacob the winner, even though God's the one who touches Jacob's hip and prevents Jacob from being able to wrestle, where, kind of by the end of the wrestling match, all Jacob can do is just kind of hold on and not let go of his opponent. And that's all he does at the end. But it's interesting that God says, you have overcome, you have won. Number 10, Two important things happened to Jacob after the conclusion of his wrestling match. What were they? Number one, Jacob gets a name changed. And this is kind of there are several things in Jacob's life that are reflective of Abraham's life, right? And here's another one. Jacob gets a name change from Jacob to Israel. And Israel literally means he wrestles with God, or he struggles with God. And God kind of gives him that explanation when he pronounces his name as Israel. Now, where is it? I gotta find it here for a second on my screen. Yeah, there it is, verse 28. Then the man said, "Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with humans and have overcome." So Israel really is the name that Jacob gets, really because of this wrestling match. He's the wrestler now, the God wrestler, which is a pretty cool term, especially considering the things that we're going to talk about a little bit later. Two important things happened. So his name changes the one thing, and then God blesses Jacob on the spot there. And again, we're gonna talk more about that in a little bit, because that really is kind of the feature of this story. We want to get into Genesis 33 and briefly talk about the meeting between Jacob and Esau. So here's Genesis 33 according to the NIV. Jacob looked up, and there was Esau coming with his 400 men. So he divided the children among Leah, Rachel, and the two female servants. Interesting that they're referred to as the two female servants there. Anyway, he put the female servants and their children in front, as opposed to wives, I'm saying. Leah and her children next, and Rachel and Joseph in the rear. So kind of order of importance you can kind of see there, right? He himself went on ahead and bowed down to the ground 7 times as he approached his brother. But Esau ran to meet Jacob and embraced him. He threw his arms around his neck and kissed him, and they wept. Then Esau looked up and saw the women and children. "Who are these with you?" he asked. Jacob answered, "They are the children God has graciously given your servant." Then the female servants and their children approached and bowed down. Next, Leah and her children came and bowed down. Last of all came Joseph and Rachel, and they too bowed down. Esau asked, "What's the meaning of all these flocks and herds I met?" "To find favor in your eyes, my lord," he said. But Esau said, "I already have plenty, my brother. Keep what you have for yourself." "No, please," said Jacob. If I have found favor in your eyes, accept this gift from me. For to see your face is like seeing the face of God." By the way, which is no small thing, considering that Jacob actually just had seen the face of God in the form of a man during the night. Anyway, now that you have received me favorably, please accept the present that was brought to you. For God has been gracious to me, and I have all I need. And because Jacob insisted, Esau accepted it. Then Esau said, "Let us be on our way. I'll accompany you." But Jacob said to him, "My Lord knows that the children are tender, and that I must care for the ewes and cows that are nursing their young. If they're driven hard just one day, all the animals will die. So let my Lord go on ahead of his servant, while I move along slowly at the pace of the flocks and herds before me, and the pace of the children, until I come to my Lord in Seir." Esau said, "Then let me leave some of my men with you." "But why do that?" Jacob asked. "Just let me find favor in the eyes of my Lord." So that day Esau started back on his way to Seir. Jacob, however, went to Succoth, where he built a place for himself and made shelters for his livestock. That is why the place is called Succoth. And by the way, Succoth means shelters. After Jacob came from Padanaram, he arrived safely at the city of Shechem in Canaan and camped within sight of the city. For 100 pieces of silver he bought from the sons of Hamor, the father of Shechem, the plot of ground where he pitched his tent. There he set up an altar and called it El Elohe Israel. El Elohe Israel means God of Israel, or mighty is the God of Israel. So here we go. Just 4 questions on Genesis 33. Number 1, at first, what did this meeting look like it was going to be? At least at the beginning of the chapter is what I'm referring to there. It looked like it was going to be a confrontation. Again, Esau's coming to Jacob with 400 men. But how did Esau greet Jacob? Boy, talk about talk about preparing for the worst and actually having the best happen. Esau greets Jacob with joy. He runs to greet him, and both Jacob and Esau end up weeping at seeing each other and greeting each other. This is quite the reunion. And you will notice that both men, both Esau and Jacob, have changed. Again, you consider where they have come from, where you have Jacob and Esau contending with one another, and that blows up and Jacob has to leave. So now what do we see? How have they changed now that they're getting back? Question 3, how has Esau changed? Well, number 1, the most obvious thing is he's no longer breathing out murderous threats against Jacob, right? Yeah, he comes with 400 men, but turns out that's not to attack Jacob at all. Instead, Esau is genuinely happy to see his brother. As a matter of fact, Esau tries to graciously decline those tremendous gifts that Jacob had given to him. And he only accepts those gifts from Jacob because Jacob ends up insisting on it. Esau even offers to have some of his men stay back to help Jacob out, maybe with his herds and flocks and everything. Wow. So Esau has done a 180. He goes from wanting to kill his brother now to being overjoyed at seeing his brother, weeping at seeing his brother, wanting to help his brother in whatever way he can, and not even wanting to accept the gifts his brother's going to give. And this is awesome. Number 4, how has Jacob changed? Note his change in attitude toward Esau, right? Before he's the deceiver, he's the manipulator. Remember? Getting the birthright from Esau and getting the blessing. But there's no manipulation, there's no deception here, is there? There is a sincere and genuine desire to reconcile. Jacob really does put it all on the line for the sake of meeting his brother, doesn't he? He's got his family with him. Jacob means it. And the fact that he insists, this is just one of the things, but the fact that he insists on Esau getting those gifts that he had given, which are substantial gifts, shows that he's being sincere here. Notice also how he addresses Esau and how he refers to himself when he talks to Esau. Remember that Jacob technically, legally, got the birthright and the blessing of the firstborn from his father. Yet how does Jacob address Esau here? My Lord. And that is a term that you use to show that the person you are talking to is above you in station, above you in position. It's a term of respect for somebody who is higher than you. Yet Jacob is referring to Esau as my Lord, even though Jacob has the birthright of the firstborn and the blessing of the firstborn. And he also refers to himself, Jacob does, as your servant. Again, lowering himself beneath what he is. So it's pretty remarkable the change that we see in Jacob. So with the time we have left here, we do want to spend some time talking about these dig deeper discussion questions. And here especially, I would encourage you, put some thought into these, write down your thoughts, and definitely if you have people in your household that you're going through this with, have a discussion about these things. I'm going to give you my thoughts, and with these, there is definitely more than one thought to share with these things. So hopefully you have something different, and between all of us together, we can kind of cover the bases pretty well. I don't know if you noticed, but for some reason, my phone has done this several times on me now. It stopped recording. So real quick, I'm being told that I have about 5 minutes of time left on my recording. So We got to squeeze these dig deeper discussion questions in it here within the next 5 minutes. I hope we can do that. So let's get right into them. Number one, what about Jacob's wrestling match with God stands out the most to you, and why? And to me, it's the end when Jacob asks for God's name. And does God tell Jacob his name? No. God shows Jacob who he is. Jacob says, "What's your name? Who are you?" God says, "Why do you want to know my name?" And then God shows him by what? Blessing him. That's who God is. He is the God who blesses his people even after he has to wrestle with them, even after he kind of has to make them submit, even if they resist him. He's going to bless them. Why? Because he is that faithful God. Ultimately, this all-powerful God lets Jacob, this man, win. And as a matter of fact, that the name change that Jacob has to Israel reflects that, right? Martin Franzmann, a Lutheran commentator, wrote, he's got a great quote about this, and it goes like this: "It is God's good pleasure to be vanquished by the stranglehold of faith." What an awesome quote that is. It is God's good pleasure to be vanquished by the stranglehold of faith. Number two, choose something about Jacob in this account that you want to imitate in your life and explain the reason or reasons you have for that choice. For me, it's the fact that Jacob just does not let go. He refuses to let go of God and his promises. He refuses to let go of God until God blesses him. In such wrestling matches, when I hold on to God and his promises, God is pleased to let me win. And he grants his blessing not because I asked so hard for it, but because I asked for that which he has promised. Hold God to his promises, literally, like Jacob, like Israel. Hold God to his promises. And remember, it is God's good pleasure to be vanquished by the stranglehold of faith. And number three, from all accounts we have studied in this Faith of Our Fathers course, how has your understanding of what faith is grown? Three quick points I want to make with you in these last couple minutes that we have. Number one, my faith is the result of God's faithfulness to God's promises. It is the fact that God is a faithful God who keeps his promises, who delivers. That is what God uses to work faith within me. My faith is the result of God's faithfulness, not the result of my really working hard at it. It's because God just won't give up on his promises. Number two, true faith in God shows itself in action. There are any number of examples we could point to for this. You could point to Abraham and Isaac on Mount Moriah. You could point to Jacob's beautiful prayer here. You could point to Jacob dealing sincerely and non-deceptively and non-manipulatively with Esau. Number three, there is no such thing as a perfect believer. We all have a continual need to grow in faith, to grow. You will never reach a point in your life where your faith is as big as it's going to be. I pray that this study has been a blessing for you. I'm sorry to kind of cut this off short. I'm a little bit distressed that we have to do that, but I don't know why my phone is doing this and why it's running out of memory. So before it kicks me off again, I will simply say God's blessings to you, and I look forward to seeing you soon.